Okay, so for today's lesson, I'm going to have you guys look at like an intro to defendants' rights, and then we're going to look at a court case tomorrow, or I'll have you look at a court case, Gideon versus Wainwright, tomorrow. So okay, so this is just kind of the first part here, just kind of some introductory stuff. So the court has occasionally ruled in favor of states' powers to restrict individual liberties. Okay, so we've seen this, right? When speech can show an increase to the danger of public safety, it can be limited. Okay, so just keep that in mind, that that's important, that the states can restrict individual liberties in some cases. So the Miranda case, probably many of you have heard of it before because of like cop shows and Law and Order and those kinds of things. The Miranda rule was created after a 1966 case known as Miranda versus Arizona. This is not one of your main cases that you need to know, your top 15, but it is one that you should be aware of and be able to at least identify some of the provisions. So what it did in 1966, which really isn't that long ago, if you think about it, it's kind of interesting, but it set the guidelines for police questioning of suspects. So a couple of rules: they must be informed of their constitutional right to remain silent. They must be warned of what they say they must be warned that what they say can be used against them in a court of law. And then they also must be told they have a right to have a lawyer present during questioning, and that a lawyer will be provided if the accused cannot afford one. So that's going to kind of go with our case that we're going to look at tomorrow, Gideon versus Wainwright. So a little preview on that. So one thing to know is that we have these constitutional rights being, then informing the people of their constitutional rights. And also, just to keep in mind that this rule does involve the interpretation and the application of the accused person's due process rights. So we find these rights in the Fifth and Sixth Amendments, right? However, because of this idea of public safety, which we've seen before, that the exception, because of that, provided by that, allows unwarranted interrogation to stand as direct evidence in court. And that is, okay, I just want to double check something really, really quick. Yep, unwarned. Okay, so that is an important aspect of this because the idea is that in some cases, if someone has not been told their right, then they can still use that in court. But that is, I would say, less infrequent than frequent because the police officers are very dialed in on issuing their Miranda warnings. Okay, now other rights that we've kind of talked about a little bit include unreasonable searches and seizures, right? So pretrial rights of the accused and the prohibition of unreasonable searches and seizures are intended to ensure that citizens' liberties are not eclipsed by a need for social order and security. So this means that if you are accused of a crime, you have the right to legal counsel, you have the right to a speedy and public trial, and you have the right to an impartial jury. More recent kind of laws and whatnot have given people protection against warrantless searches of cell phone data. So we talked a little bit about cell phones and how that's created more problems or newer age problems just because of the technology incorporated in them. And then also following 9/11, we had the Patriot Act and then the USA Freedom Act, and that places limits on bulk collection of telecommunication metadata. So basically, under the Patriot Act, which was passed after 9/11, they were allowed to do wiretapping and of people that they suspected of ties to terrorist organizations or whatnot, but there were limitations put on that. Okay, these are just a couple things the College Board kind of wants you to know. So write down any questions. I understand like this is a weird way to do this, but we're kind of in the moment. So please write down any questions that you have or things that are unclear and bring them to me when I see you next on Monday. And then tomorrow I am going to have you look at Gideon versus Wainwright and analyze that. That is one of your top 15 cases. So hopefully you have some experience with hearing about the Miranda rule in the past, so it's not something brand new. And then I am going to have you watch a crash course on this topic as a little bit more of an introduction. All right, thanks guys. Make sure you write down your questions and bring them to me.